This is Real News Media TV, coverage you can trust. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates. MAJ concerned about possible impact of fourth wave of COVID-19 in Jamaica. President of the Medical Association of Jamaica, Dr. Brian James, believes the early COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations emerging from the start of the fourth wave are cause for concern. Dr. James, speaking on Tuesday with the news, said he was concerned that many people are not taking the Omicron variant seriously because of reports that it is milder than other strains. He is warning that the Omicron variant has been found to be very contagious and could result in rapid infection of more persons, causing hospitalization numbers to also go up quickly. There is already evidence of this, he said. Dr. James is warning Jamaicans not to assume that the impact of the Omicron variant will be the same here as in countries with high vaccination numbers. Dr. James is also concerned about what he said was the government's apparent abandonment of its vaccination target for children, recalling that the government had announced a student vaccination target of 65% as a condition for schools to resume face-to-face classes. He said, "We have backtracked on that. Schools are reopening despite not achieving the 65% vaccination target for students," he noted. "Yet I have not heard any plan to get to this 65% vaccination rate."
The initial numbers are looking kind of worrying. 10 days ago, we had 80 people in hospital right around the island. Today, I think it went up to 170. I mean, that is serious increase. Remember, the original policy of the government was to do face-to-face only when the schools had achieved the 65% vaccination rate, because it was recognized that that was one way of mitigating the devastation that could happen if we have face-to-face. However, we have backtracked on that, yet I have not heard any plan to get to this 65% vaccination rate.
Finance Ministry takes a surcharge action against officials at the Education Ministry. The Ministry of Finance has taken surcharge action against officials at the Ministry of Education following last year's report by Auditor General Pamela Monroe Ellis regarding the payment of $124 million to the Joint Committee for Tertiary Education. A surcharge action is a charge against an official to compensate for breach of fiduciary duty that occurs through negligence or intentional conduct. The Auditor General said the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Dean Roy Bernard, and the Acting Permanent Secretary, Dr. Grace McLean, failed in their fiduciary duties after the Education Ministry was unable to account for how the JCTE spent taxpayers' money. Speaking at Wednesday's post-cabinet briefing, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education Robert Morgan said the surcharge letters have been delivered to the officials in question and that they have 30 days in which to respond or activate whatever personal action they seek to take in that regard. Mr. Morgan described the surcharge letters issued by the Ministry of Finance as unprecedented, but pointed out that the ministry was empowered by the public service rules to take such action against individuals who may be found to have acted in a particular manner as it relates to taxpayers' funds. "You would really recognize that I am being very careful in wording, because the recommendation of a surcharge doesn't necessarily mean that the person is convicted of a crime. So what has happened is that, based on the recommendation of the Auditor General, the Ministry of Finance, which has responsibility for these issues, has acted on that recommendation, and we all will have to wait to see what the outcome of that action is," he said. Mr. Morgan also intervened when Education Minister Favour Williams was asked whether she was still confident in Dr. Grace McLean's leadership in the wake of the Auditor General's findings. "I would say that is an unfair question to ask the minister in light of the fact that there's an investigation taking place," he insisted. The minister would not be in a position to express a confidence or a lack thereof in light of the questions and investigations, so we await the outcomes of the investigations before we make any pronouncement on any person's guilt or innocence, he reiterated. The authorities investigating the matter are still unable to account for funds paid to the Joint Committee on Tertiary Education.
They have been delivered to the persons in question. It is now for the persons in question to activate whatever mechanisms within 30 days. Yes, they have 30 days to respond, and they are empowered to activate whatever personal action they seek to take in that regard. That's a matter that is managed by the Ministry of Finance. The ministry has just been a conduit for transferring the information. The public service rules empower the Ministry of Finance to surcharge individuals who may be found to have acted in a particular manner as it relates to taxpayers' funds. You would recognize that I'm being very careful in my wording, because the recommendation of a surcharge doesn't necessarily mean that the person is convicted of a crime. So what has happened is that, based on the recommendation of the Auditor General, the Ministry of Finance, which has responsibility for these issues, has acted on that recommendation, and we all will have to wait to see what the outcome of that action is. And I would say an unfair question to ask the Minister, in light of the fact, as you will be well aware, because you reported it extensively on your station, that there's an investigation taking place. So it is a bit premature to even ask the Minister about confidence, as the Minister would not be in a position to express confidence or a lack thereof in light of questions and investigations. The only thing I will say on behalf of the Minister is that persons within our legal Commonwealth jurisdiction are innocent until proven otherwise. So we await the outcomes of the investigations before we make any pronouncement on any person's guilt or innocence.
Grace Kennedy implements a vaccine mandate. The Grace Kennedy Group has announced that it will implement a COVID-19 vaccination policy for employees and contractors this year. GK joins at least 2 other major companies to implement a vaccine mandate. Under the policy, as of January 14, GK team members will be required to disclose their COVID-19 vaccination status to the company. The COVID-19 vaccination requirement will then take effect on February 11, when all GK employees, contractors, and consultants will be required to be either fully or partially vaccinated against COVID-19. Then on April 29, 2022, all GK employees, contractors, and consultants will be required to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or be subject to COVID-19 PCR testing every 2 weeks. If team members, contractors, or consultants opt not to be fully vaccinated by April 29 and choose to take a PCR test instead, the cost of the test will be borne by them. GK Group CEO Don Webby said the timing of the policy has been carefully considered based on the availability of vaccines in the markets where GK operates and the time required between the first and the second dose of some types of vaccines. Webby said despite the company's best efforts to sensitize staff via awareness sessions and a vaccine blitz, vaccination rates across the group vary considerably by location, and in some places they remain too low. This is particularly worrying as the highly contagious Omicron variant of the virus spreads around the world. I consider the GK team a part of my extended family, and their safety is of paramount importance to me. So in keeping with GK's commitment and my own personal commitment to provide a safe working environment for our team, a COVID-19 vaccination policy is being rolled out across our group, Webby told the staff at a virtual town hall on Wednesday morning. The vaccine policy will apply to all new and existing employees of GK and will also extend to the company's third-party contractors, consultants, and independent contractors. GK said applications for exemptions from the vaccination directive for medical reasons will be considered. Details of the draft policy were presented to the GK team on Wednesday morning, and the staff was given the opportunity to ask questions and provide feedback. Professor of Public Health, Epidemiology, and HIV/AIDS Dr. Peter Figueroa also presented on the importance of COVID-19 vaccination and participated in the question and answer segment at the town hall. Many of us have lost colleagues, friends, family members, and other loved ones to this virus. It has been an extremely difficult time for us all, so we must do all that we can to stop the spread of this devastating disease. I believe that widespread vaccination will be vital in winning our fight against COVID-19, and I have made a personal commitment to the GK team that I will do everything in my power to ensure that every GK team member who wishes to get vaccinated has the opportunity to do so, Webby said. Man suspected of participating in New Year's Day gun salute charged. A man suspected of using a homemade gun to carry out a gun salute on New Year's Day has been charged under the Firearms Act. He is 20-year-old Corey Brown of Casanor Drive, Nagahead in St. Catherine. He has been charged with illegal possession of firearm and ammunition. Reports are that about 12:01 a.m., lawmen were on patrol in the community when they heard explosions. The team went to investigate, and Brown was seen with a homemade gun. He was accosted and a weapon found in his waistband loaded with a 112-gauge cartridge. Brown is scheduled to appear before the gun court on Friday, January 14, 2022. Man gunned down in Spanish Town. A St. Catherine man identified only as Shaba was shot and killed in Rivoli, Spanish Town, St. Catherine on Wednesday morning. Reports from residents are that gunshots were heard around 10:45 a.m. The police were summoned and the man was found lying in a pool of blood. The Spanish Town police are investigating. New Manchester Family Court to open tomorrow. The new Manchester Family Court, which was last month handed over to the judiciary by the Ministry of Justice, will become operational on Thursday, January 6. Director of Client Services, Communications and Information at the Court Administration Division, Khadijah Fletcher, noted that all family-related matters that were previously listed in the Manchester Parish Court will now be heard at the Manchester Family Court. The Manchester Family Court, like other specialized family courts in the island, has jurisdiction dealing with matters of maintenance, domestic violence, matters arising under the Child Care and Protection Act, offenses including children under 18 years of age, guardianship and custody of children, and adoption. The Manchester Family Court, located at 2 Park Crescent, was established following refurbishing work on the old Mandeville Courthouse, which was substantially damaged by fire in November 2019. The refurbished court has now been outfitted with new office spaces, audiovisual equipment, and a children's lounge. Meanwhile, the Court Administration Division is advising the public that the court will now open at 9:30 a.m. and will close at 2:30 p.m. on Mondays to Fridays. The revised operating hours are due to construction activities to update the courthouse. As a result, these revised hours will remain in effect for the duration of the project, Fletcher said. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Select all for daily news updates.